Hello everyone. So today we will be going through some of the question and answers in relation to ipconfig command. Uh, so we have previously uh, seen the ipconfig command output and why it is basically used. So this recap based on question and answer will help to think about those things which we discussed in the last or in the previous videos in this computer network series. So let's get started. So basically, if you remember from the previous video, we had a discussion about how to find an IP address in a given device, right? So in that previous video, we basically saw that ipconfig command can be used to uh, understand or to know what the IP address of the system is, and then additional details which it provides. So we will just be going through some of the question and answers in this video. So just to recap of the flow, and I think it is a useful thing to keep in mind this flow just for better understanding of how the IP address allocation works in, right? So here we can see that this is just an example of a home network setup in general. So what we generally have is we have the laptop. We call it PC or computer or laptop, anything. And then we have a router. A router is basically connected to internet via internet lines. So whoever is the internet service provider, so he or she will be setting up the router in our home so that we can connect to internet using our laptop or any other device. So now basically in previous videos we also uh, discussed that how IP address allocation works. So we know that there is a DHCP client service running on the laptop, and then there is a DHCP server which is running on the router. So whenever the laptop is booting up, so it has initial address of 0.0.0.0, which means nothing in this context, and then it will basically shout uh, on the network to get an IP address, and then as part of this IP address allocation process, the router is going to assign a dynamic IP address to this. And as well, when initially laptop is shouting on the network that is there a DHCP server, I do not have an IP address, and I have a placeholder for IP address like 0.0.0.0. So basically uh, it basically uses the Wi-Fi connection on network, wherein the Wi-Fi network interface card is going to have a MAC address. So based on those terms, let's go through the question and answers. And as well, just before uh, going through those Q&As, we can go back to this screenshot here for how the response looks like when we type ipconfig with /all command. So you can see here that basically while executing this ipconfig command in the output, we get uh, different details for each network interface card. So in this case, like we have Ethernet, and then we have Wi-Fi, and then we have Bluetooth, and then few this one more. And then for each network interface card or network connectivity, we will be having the associated MAC address or physical address and DHCP enabled, auto configuration enabled, IPv4 address, lease obtained, lease expires, gateway, DNS server. So let's let's see what these questions are all about. So first of all, what command shows IP and MAC address on Windows? So as we have just seen, ipconfig/all. So it is going to give us the details about the IP addresses as well as the MAC addresses for each individual network interface card we have on this device. Then what does the physical address field show in ipconfig/all? So physical address is the MAC address of the specific network adapter, right? Then the next one is, what does DHCP enabled means? So as you can see in the first screenshot of the ipconfig command output, so DHCP enabled is a Boolean flag. So it is going to have yes or no. So if DHCP enabled is yes, then it means that a router is going to assign an IP address to this device based on the DHCP client service and DHCP server communication. Whenever the laptop is booting up and it detects that there is a network interface card of Wi-Fi or Ethernet connected to the network, so then that process starts. And so if DHCP enabled is yes, then it means that router is going to assign an IP address to this device. Then if DHCP enabled is no, so basically no such communication is going to happen to get the IP address from the router. So IP address has been manually set, or it is a static IP, right? So that is what it means. Then comes a lease. What is a DHCP lease? So as we know that whenever the router is assigning an IP address, so if we go back to this, so we know that whenever the laptop is booting up, it detects that network interface card of the Wi-Fi is connected to a router, right? So what it is going to do is the DHCP client service will shout on this network. So basically the DHCP client service running on this laptop will leverage network connectivity via this network interface card of Wi-Fi, and it will shout to everyone, say, hey, is there any DHCP server? So then whenever the router is coming back saying, okay, this is the IP address which you can use for this much amount of time. So that is what the dynamic IP address is. So it means that a router is allocating or giving this laptop an option to use this IP address for certain duration. So that is what the lease stands for. So it is the period of time for which a router assigns an IP address to a device. As soon as this times gets expired, so there is going to be a new IP address for this device. So now that new IP address can still be the same as this one, but it will get renewed. So that is what the lease is all about. So we can see that now the next two questions are, what does lease obtained and lease expiry means? So as we have seen that there is a lease time, so it means we can see here that when it got this IP address, so it's the start time. So basically clock starts from this time. So lease obtained and lease expires. So when this time is going to expire. So that is what we are saying here, that date and time when the current IP address was assigned to your device, so that is the lease obtained, and when the date and time when the current IP address assignment runs out and must be renewed, so that is the lease expiry. So I think it's obvious to understand what expiry means here. Then comes what is the default gateway, right? So as we can see in this picture again, laptop is uh, connecting to a router, and then router is the one which is connected to the internet. So every request from any laptop connected to this network via router, so all the requests will always go through the router, and then router will uh, send the request to the get the data, and then it will as soon as it gets the response from the internet network, then it's going to basically send this data back to the client, right? So what we are seeing is default gateway. So gateway is nothing but the IP address of your router, because in this case router is actually acting as a gateway to get the to get the connectivity to the internet and serve the data to the clients. So now sometimes it could also happen that so this gateway IP address can be different of what the router IP address is. So I think what we are saying is, so when we type ipconfig slash all command, so in the output for the network interface card, whatever is the gateway, default gateway currently, so that is what is serving or getting the data from the internet, right? Then next comes is what is a DNS server. So again, if we look at the output of ipconfig command, so for each network interface card, be it Ethernet, be it Wi-Fi, so we have the DNS server. So DNS server is actually helps or it maintains the mapping between a host name and an IP address. So generally, for example, when we are typing www.google.com or www.youtube.com or any other website or URL in our browser, laptop's browser, so we do not know the IP address where this YouTube server is located and things like that. But ultimately, this request, when we are typing www.google.com, it should go to one of the Google servers. So this translation of host name to IP address is done by the DNS server. So it maintains the mapping. So when we are getting the DNS server in the output of ipconfig command for each network interface card, so we know that here is the DNS server running. So like in this case, it is 8.8.4.4. Similarly for Wi-Fi, we have 8.8.4.4. But it can also be the case that DNS server is IP address is same as the router's one. So in that case, router is also serving one more purpose of running the DNS programs or DNS server. So next ones is, what does media disconnected means in ipconfig slash all? So sometimes you can see even in your machine, if if you disconnect Wi-Fi and then you basically run this command ipconfig slash all, then you can see for some network interface cards, maybe for Wi-Fi, if you have disabled Wi-Fi, so you can see media disconnected. So for example, in this screenshot, we have Bluetooth network connection. as Bluetooth is also network interface card. So for this, we can see media disconnected. So it is highly likely that we have currently disabled Bluetooth in our machine. And that's the reason it says media disconnected. So in case we are turning off the Wi-Fi on our machine, then it will say media disconnected. Or if we remove the Ethernet cable, then it will say media disconnected. So that is what media disconnected means. Then what next question is, what is auto configuration enabled? Now, in previous videos in our computer network series, we had discussed about that it could happen that, for example, whenever the laptop is, so if there is a situation where laptop is booting up and then it's not able to make a connection to the router because of any reason, then we know this DORA process will fail. So, or this DHCP mechanism will fail and laptop is not going to get an IP address, right? But if the auto configuration is enabled, then uh, with the help of automatic IP address allocation, it's going to get a IP address, different IP address. So that mechanism is called APIPA, right? But if basically, so auto configuration enabled is yes, then it means that if DHCP fails, then Windows automatically assigns a temporary IP in the range of 169.254.x.x. So the adapter or the network interface card still has some address. Okay. So the next one is, what is an APIPA address? So APIPA stands for Automatic Private IP Addressing. So it's a self-assigned IP address in the range of 169.254.x.x given when the DHCP fails. So this auto configuration property is associated with APIPA address. So every time this DHCP conversation fails and router is not able to allocate an IP address, dynamic IP address to client or laptop, whoever is requesting an IP address, in that case, if auto configuration is enabled, then it's with the help of APIPA, it's going to get a temporary IP address in the range of 169.254.x.x. Okay. So I think that is what we have for today in this video. But these question and answers are based on uh, our computer network series, where we have already gone through different topics on IPv4 addressing, IPv6 addressing, then whenever the laptop is booting up, how IP address allocation works, uh, and things like that. So if you want to go through those detailed videos, then you can search for this channel and then you will get all the details. So that's it for today. I hope it was useful. Thank you and happy learning.